course, we are back on News and Views. You can join the conversation live by calling our studio line 011-680-0355. You can reach us on WhatsApp at 061-766-0355. Our handle on X is at Salam Media. On Facebook, you can reach us at facebook.com/Salam Media. And of course, the live stream is on Salam Media website, salammedia.com/listen-live. And today, on this segment, we are talking to Abdullah Al Anjari, who is a doctoral researcher in Palestine studies and a postgraduate teaching associate at the University of Exeter and University College London in the UK. We will be talking, of course, about the situation in Jerusalem right now and the situation surrounding Masjid Al Aqsa. Assalamu alaikum, Abdullah. How are you?
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Absolutely. And I think this topic is really relevant to your research. And so we're very happy to have you as well. And so, of course, what we're talking about today is the news that came through a few days ago of Israel restricting the access of Palestinians to the Aqsa Mosque compound, or what we also know in Arabic as Al-Haram al-Sharif, in the occupied East Jerusalem for the first Friday prayers of Ramadan. They restricted the amount of worshippers to about 10,000 from the occupied West Bank, and only those with permits. And I think they had restricted it as well to children under the age of 12, men over the age of 55, and women over the age of 50. So how significant is this? And what does Al-Aqsa and control over it mean in the context of what Israel is trying to achieve?
First of all, Israel's restrictions of the entry of Muslims into Al-Aqsa is nothing new. It has been doing this every single year. And since 1967, Israel has worked systematically to change the status quo in Al-Aqsa Mosque. First of all, we have to establish the facts. Al-Aqsa Mosque is 100% religious endowment, meaning that it is 100% Islamic waqf. It belongs in its entirety to the Muslims. After 1967, the Israeli authorities began violating gradually the status quo in Al-Aqsa Mosque by giving the green light to Jewish settlers to break into Al-Aqsa Mosque, and at the same time by gradually restricting the entrance of Muslims into the holy Muslim sites. This should be viewed within the broader context of Israel's attempts to Judaize Al-Aqsa Mosque. And they initially, in recent years, especially in the aftermath of the 7th of October, Israel worked to systematically Judaize Al-Aqsa in unprecedented ways. For example, there were many days where there weren't any prayers held in Al-Aqsa Mosque. And on these same days, Jewish settlers were allowed to break into Al-Aqsa to perform their Talmudic rituals. Of course, these Jewish settlers do not hide their intentions about ultimately wanting to completely destroy Al-Aqsa Mosque and build a Jewish temple on the ruins of Al-Aqsa Mosque. Zionist Jews in particular believe that Al-Aqsa Mosque is the location of their demolished Jewish temple, which was initially demolished by the Babylonians. They rebuilt it again. It was demolished by the Roman Empire, according to their narrative 2,000 years ago. And Muslims, according to their narrative, built Al-Aqsa Mosque on the ruins of their demolished temples. And today, right-wing Israelis don't hide their intentions of actually wanting to completely destroy Al-Aqsa and build on its ruins a Jewish temple. In fact, in the aftermath of the 7th of October, right-wing Jewish settlers used AI to create a video of Al-Aqsa Mosque Dome of the Rock burning, and with the caption "coming soon." So they don't actually hide their intentions of wanting to completely destroy Al-Aqsa and build a Jewish temple on its ruins. And this isn't anything new, by the way. From 1967 onwards, there were many attempts to completely destroy Al-Aqsa Mosque by Zionists. For example, in 1969, an evangelical Christian Zionist named Dennis Rohan broke into Al-Aqsa Mosque and set fire to Al-Aqsa with the intention of destroying it to create a Jewish temple on its ruins. Throughout the 1980s and 1990s, even in the 20th century, there were many attempts to destroy Al-Aqsa and build a Jewish temple on its ruins. Also, equally important, it's important to mention that after 1967, immediately after occupying East Jerusalem, Israel began excavating tunnels under Al-Aqsa Mosque with the aim of finding any artifacts that prove that Al-Aqsa Mosque was indeed built on the ruins of their Jewish temple. However, despite the hundreds of excavations under Al-Aqsa Mosque from 1967 to this day, the Israeli authorities could not find any evidence whatsoever that Al-Aqsa Mosque was indeed built on the ruins of their Jewish temple. And I have to mention that even within the Jewish community, there isn't consensus about the location of the Temple Mount or the Jewish temple, the demolished Jewish temple. But right-wing Zionist Israelis insist that the Temple Mount was in the location of Al-Aqsa Mosque, and despite the fact that no artifacts were found from the archaeological excavations under Al-Aqsa. Equally important, it should be mentioned that Al-Aqsa today is inaccessible to the overwhelming majority of Palestinians. In fact, Jerusalem is inaccessible to the overwhelming majority of the Palestinians. Since the 1993 Oslo Accords to this day, Israel established a completely new reality. It completely isolated East Jerusalem from the greater West Bank. According to a well-known Palestinian sociologist, Salim Tamari, he claims that, he states that it became easier for a Palestinian in Ramallah or Beit Lahem in the West Bank to go to New York or to go to Paris than to go to Jerusalem, despite the fact that Jerusalem is only a stone's throw away from Ramallah or from Beit Lahem. A car trip usually from Ramallah or Beit Lahem to Jerusalem takes 10 to 15 minutes. However, after the Oslo Accords and after establishing the apartheid wall, which aims to isolate Jerusalem from the greater West Bank, it became extremely challenging for Palestinians from the West Bank to go to Jerusalem and to perform their prayers in Al-Aqsa Mosque. But this is not only limited to Palestinian Muslims. Palestinian Christians are also equally impacted by the isolation of Jerusalem from the greater West Bank. As we already know, Jerusalem is the location of one of the holiest sites for Christianity, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. And Christian Palestinians from Beit Lahem and from throughout the West Bank are unable to access Christian holy sites in Jerusalem because of Israel's isolation and the isolation of East Jerusalem from the greater West Bank.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Abdullah, I just wanted to, sorry to cut you off, but I just wanted to mention really quickly, like a couple of really important dynamics and facts as well that kind of relate to this. The first, of course, being, with regards to the 10,000 worshippers that were allowed in. I think, 10,000 can sound like a big number to people, especially, over here in Johannesburg, a mosque that fits 10,000 people would probably be, possibly one of the biggest mosques in the country. However, the capacity of Al-Haram al-Sharif, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is something close to 500,000.
Yes. Yeah.
And so when the Aqsa Mosque compound is full, there's around 500,000 worshippers in there. So we're talking really about a tiny percentage of people who are normally permitted to go and pray there, who are being permitted to go and pray there at the moment. So aside from the fact that, it's only people above and below a certain age, like it is a really, really tiny number compared to the number of people who are allowed to be there. The other thing, as well, that I just kind of want to mention, as you say, actually is, you're right, that Israel is trying as well to kind of fragment, Palestine in a geographical sense, right? So they're trying to kind of stop there being any sort of conversation or communication as well between Palestinians who live in these different zones, right? Because of course 48, Gaza, East Jerusalem, and the West Bank are all governed using different sets of laws. And so can you tell us a little bit more about these different kind of sets of laws that govern the four territories that, constitute historic Palestine, and also kind of the set of rules that also govern Palestinians like myself who are in exile?
So regarding the different rules, it's important to mention that Palestinian Jerusalemites in East Jerusalem in particular, they did, unlike Palestinians in the 1948 territories, they were not granted Israeli citizenship after 1967. Instead they were given permanent residency status. Palestinians in the West Bank were given a different type of identity cards. Palestinians in East Jerusalem were given blue identity cards to distinguish them from the greater West Bank. And Palestinians in the Gaza Strip had a completely different system to govern them. Regarding the permanent status of Palestinian Jerusalemites in East Jerusalem, they were given the status of permanent residents. Of course, this is a very, very, very fragile legal status, because in any moment, under any excuse, the Israeli authorities can easily revoke the permanent residency status of any Palestinian in East Jerusalem. In fact, it has been argued that Israel has weaponized the permanent residency status of Palestinians in East Jerusalem to eliminate and ethnically cleanse as many indigenous Palestinians in East Jerusalem as possible. More than 15,000 Palestinians had their residency status revoked by the Israeli authorities from 1967 to this day. And therefore, this revocation of the permanent residency status of Palestinians in East Jerusalem has been described as a policy of quiet ethnic cleansing. This is because, as I mentioned, Palestinians in East Jerusalem are unlike Palestinian citizens of Israel, those in the territories of 1948. They do not carry the Israeli passport, and the legal status that they have been granted, which is residency status, is very fragile. It can be revoked at any time. Whereas
Just
Palestinians...
quickly before we wrap up, can you tell us like some of the reasons for which they get revoked? Within 30 seconds, because we have to wrap up.
Many reasons. Some of them can be as pathetic as sharing social media posts that, with air quotes, incite against the state of Israel. Palestinians lost their residency status to live in Jerusalem simply for sharing social media posts that were interpreted as an incitement against the state of Israel. Of course, this should be seen within the broader context of Israel wanting to establish an exclusively Jewish capital in Palestine since 1967. Israel has worked systematically to establish a Jewish demographic majority in Jerusalem. It has done it's working systematically to establish this exclusively Jewish capital by building illegal Jewish settlements at the expense of indigenous Palestinian lands, by demolishing Palestinian homes, by revoking the identity cards and residency status of Palestinian Jerusalemites, and in many different ways. It has been trying to completely eliminate indigenous Palestinian presence from East Jerusalem, both Muslim Palestinian Christian presence and both Muslim and Christian Palestinian presence, and to make the city an exclusively Jewish capital.
Thank you so much, Abdullah. Abdullah Al Anjari is a doctoral researcher in Palestine studies and a postgraduate teaching associate at the University of Exeter and University College London. Thank you so much, Abdullah. Jazakallah khair. Thanks for joining us. And of course, I should mention that Abdullah is also joining us at a ridiculously early hour in the morning over there in sunny Southwestistan in Exeter in the UK. Thank you so much, Abdullah. Ma'a salama. We'll be back with our listeners after this short break for our last guest of today.